Hello, everyone. Welcome to Round the Horn. The music you hear in the background is by today's special guest, Screamin' Steve Barlotta, sax player with the Sensational Soul Cruisers, with special guest Bruce Springsteen. Hello, Steve. How are you?
What's going on, Lee? It's great to see you.
Oh, it's great to see you too. Now, we've got to tell our viewers actually a little bit of background, first of all, but most recently, you have had some health problems.
Yep. Wound up contracting COVID-19. The middle of March, I was hospitalized March 25th, March 31st. I wound up staying in the hospital and getting ventilated for 24 days, 37 days in ICU.
Amazing. In fact, that's the last time that you and I saw each other was that performance of the Soul Cruisers at the Wonder Bar.
Yeah, I totally forgot about it. I was like, it's been like so long ago. The
Yeah.
world has changed, since then, crazy stuff.
Yeah, you're lucky to be alive. We thank the Lord for your progress and bringing us back to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's great to see you.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about your background, your bio, for instance. Let's say, well, where were you born?
I was born in Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in Bensonhurst. I started playing saxophone at 15. The only reason why it wasn't like a calling to play music. My father always loved the saxophone, and this guy growing up in Brooklyn owed him money, and he gave him a saxophone. And my father said, "Okay, Stephen, this is what you're going to do," and handed him the saxophone. And being scared of my father, who was so tough, I said, "Okay, I'm going to do it." And I wound up practicing. I went to, Manhattan School of Music. I really, I wound up, early on, I took a liking to it. I was like, I eventually wound up seeing it in, in the 70s, the 70s, growing up playing the saxophone, it was a predominant solo instrument. Besides seeing it in Bruce, you would see it in, different bands that would have it. And I was like, wow, this is actually pretty cool. A guy can play lead saxophone in a rock and roll band, so I wound up embracing it.
That's great. That's great. Now, as a youngster, did you play baseball?
I played baseball. I played Little League. I was a catcher and first baseman. I played up to Babe Ruth League. I grew up in New York, so I always had that little bit of a thing going on. So I root for the Mets, root for the Yankees. I'm a New York fan. I root for both of them. But when it comes down to it, I love the Mets. I've been, to so many Met games. I used to have Met season tickets.
Oh, great, great, great.
So it was a lot of fun. I've been to some pretty historic games. I mean, one of my best moments was actually with you. We did a show back in '86 when an opening for John Eddy when I was with Eddie Testa.
Right.
And it was Game 6 of the World Series. And I remember the show was put on hold until the end of that game.
Right.
And I'll never forget the Pony being so packed and everybody glued to the televisions. It was amazing, and just seeing Bill Buckner, give it to us, it was great. It was a great moment,
They had that game on, well, actually, probably while you were still in the hospital. They had replayed all the 86 World Series games. And I said, I just have to watch this again because it's such a strange moment and, almost unpredictable, that's for sure, because Buckner was a good baseball player. He's a good first baseman.
Well, that's why, in a wacky way, I believe in divine intervention sometimes. And I do believe that God loves the Mets. Occasionally, he throws us a bone,
Yes, right, exactly.
And I'll take it, but I've been, following the Mets. It's funny you speak about that. While I was on the vent, when I came off the vent, I was in Compass. I was in the hospital for 103 days. Eventually, my wife brought up my iPad, and I was able to move my finger. And what I did was basically that. I watched every historical baseball game that they had on YouTube. I watched, the '76 Chambliss game, the Yankees,
Right, sure,
and,
yeah.
You know, I watched that game, watched Reggie's home run game against the Dodgers. And then I watched the 73 Mets with, McGraw, you got to believe, which was, I really hoped that they would have won, but they went up against the Oakland A's, which were a great team that year.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Sure.
So I watched a whole bunch of those games. I watched, David Cohn pitches perfect game. Tom Seaver pitches no-hitter. It was like, I spent about the last 3 weeks of Encompass watching baseball games.
That's great. So baseball contributed to your rehab.
It actually did. It brought back great. It's what it is as a sport, at any sport, and it's really the only sport I follow. There's something about it, being out in the sun. You can watch the women going by. It's such a slow pace that you can take it all in. And it actually transports you back to a time and place. Where you remember where you were. Like, all right, David Wells games, for the Yankees. Talking about the Yankees, we were doing a show at a club in New York City with the Soul Cruisers, and right before we went on, there was a buzz on the street. People were listening to. They said David Wells is pitching a perfect game. We actually, on the break, went back to the car, and it was like old school. We wound up sitting in the car listening, to John Sterling call the game on the break. And it's moments like that come back to you and
Sure.
remember, wow, that was, 99, 98. And it was, just a great time, when you look at the games.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And baseball is an integral part of many, many of our lives.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's an amazing sport. And, I've been kind of lucky to sort of get involved with professional baseball for a while now. And, people ask me, what do you see in baseball? It's such a boring game, but you know what? It's like watching a chess match.
Yep.
There are so many things. And when you're in the stands yourself, you're almost pretending to be a manager of the team.
Strategizing, yeah, absolutely.
You criticize the moves a manager's making. You tell, hey, this guy should have done this. This guy should have done this. I would have bunted here and all that kind of stuff. So it's an amazing game in that respect because, most people think it's just physical, but was it Yogi Berra that said it's 90% of it's half mental?
Mental, right? Yeah.
Something like that. But there are so many funny characters that baseball has given us. The other day, I was looking at the congressional hearings with Casey Stengel.
Oh, wow.
And it was actually a comedy skit because of what he was going through and I guess the pressure that he had in trying to answer questions that he had nothing to do with.
Right.
And the funniest thing was right after Stengel was, excused, they had Mickey Mantle. Yeah. And Mickey said, well, I agree about just about everything that Casey said.
Well, with the manager, right? Talk about baseball characters. So I have a story for you. I was playing, this is such a wacky thing, playing in Atlantic City with Gary, and we played.
That's Gary U.S. Bonds, by the way.
Bonds, right? And I was his musical director, and this is 1994, and we're playing at Trump Marina. You can't make this stuff up. And I'm playing at Trump Marina, and we played for Donald Trump. So I thought that was, at the time, Donald Trump was, he owned the casinos and everything else. So it was great, being a part of that situation. So then we had to fly to Florida the following morning. So we get on the plane, flying from Atlantic City down to Tampa. Get on the plane. This is 94. This is the end of July. And I'm on the plane, and we sit in first class. Sitting in first class, and a gentleman sits next to me. And I was sweating. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. I'm like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? I didn't say nothing for an hour. On the flight, eventually they bring cheesecake out. And the person next to me says, I'll have the cheesecake. I turn to him and go, I'll have exactly what he's having to break the ice. It was George Steinbrenner.
Oh my goodness.
I wasted that whole hour. I sat, then the final hour on the flight, hour and 15 minutes, I We talked the whole time. He wound up giving me tickets, putting my name at the door,
Right.
you know. But the funny thing is, he was hoping that there wouldn't be a strike. He said, and the one thing he did say, he says, the New York Yankees, the team we are building is going to be dominant for the next 20 years. And he was, pretty
Yeah.
close to being right on. He
Sure.
said that they were building the team that was going to be of all teams. And it was amazing sitting next to him. And he was really, really a down-to-earth guy. He talked about his horses, he had
Yeah.
horses. And this is like 94, and he was hoping there wouldn't be a strike. And he said, the Yankees are going to wind up winning. He says, you see, And
I had been lucky to be introduced to the Yankees' personal or the team lawyer for a while.
right.
I mean, Bill Dowling. And this is an amazing guy. He had a corner office overlooking Central Park. So you can see what kind of lawyer he was. And in his office, he had this Daily News drawing. Now, you kind of remember that, I guess it was maybe Bill King, I think his name was.
Bill Gallo?
I'm not sure. Gallo, right, sure. Bill Gallo did these sketches and everything, and they wound up. So in his office was Herr Steinbrenner with the helmet on and everything. The second guy in line was Lou Piniella.
Right.
And the third guy was my friend Bill Dowling. So I said, how did you get this job? And he said, this is the weirdest thing. One day I'm in court and Steinbrenner is a witness for a case. And then later on, he comes up to me and says, I want you to work for me. And, he's just a great guy, that's for sure. And people just didn't understand him most of the time.
Oh, yeah, most of the time they didn't. I mean, he just, but he made the right moves. He got Cashman in there, and that, 94, 95, they were on their way.
What was really good was that, he kept Stick Michael around because he knew that he needed somebody with experience to be an advisor.
Yeah.
He was always good to his people, that's for sure.
Yeah, they stayed with him. I mean, I do believe that the 2000 Mets would have won the World Series if they didn't go up against the mighty Yankees.
That's right. Yeah, sure. They were a great team.
The Mets, the 2000 team, the Mets should have won it. You know what I mean? But going up against the Yankees, you just, I knew right away. And it was like when Benitez gave up the game, I was like, all right, let's just, we'll call it a day,
Yeah, they were a Cinderella team, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Now, I'm sure we go back to the 86 Mets and the 73 Mets and the 69 Mets. You start thinking about all the famous players that they had. And, it's great to reminisce.
Yeah, I mean, as I talk, like, I sometimes, I give Bobby Strange a call. We used to go to a lot of games. I used to get tickets to the playoffs, and I would take him, and it would be like, there's nothing better in the world than watching a ball game.
Sure, yeah. We've had Bobby on as a guest earlier in the year.
Yeah, I wound up, my first game I ever went to was 1972. My Uncle Billy, who just got back from Vietnam, him and his friend, they took us to a game. We sat third base, second row in old Yankee Stadium. So really my first game was a Yankee game,
Right.
And we sat third base, second, like right on the field. And it was Old Timers Day, because it got rained out the day before. So it was a Sunday doubleheader against the California Angels, and Nolan Ryan was pitching one of the games.
Oh, wow.
And plus we had Old Timers Day in between. So it was, it was a regular, when they did double headers, back to back, now
Sure.
it's day night, they change it up.
Right,
But
right.
we were there all day, but in between was the Old Timers game. And I never will forget my Uncle Billy telling me, look, he said, that's Jackie Robinson. He was signing autographs. And at that time, being a little kid, 7 years old, I was like, oh, Jackie Robinson, to find out that he was actually who he was, you know what I mean?
Sure, yeah, right, sure. Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget when they brought out, they introduced, Joe DiMaggio and Mickey Mantle, and the place clapped for like 10 minutes. It was unbelievable. And I saw Mickey Mantle hit a home run in the Old Timers game.
No kidding, wow.
I saw him hit a home run, and the place went crazy. And my uncle was saying, "That's Mickey Mantle. You saw him hit a home run, and he hit it, left field, right on the line." but it's so short left field there. But it was great. You know what I mean? It got me hooked. From that moment on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kid.
I know my family were originally, they were New York Giant fans.
Oh, Polo Grounds.
Yeah, at the Polo Grounds. And actually, that was my first Met game at the Polo Grounds.
Yeah, because they played there the first 2
Right, when I was a little leaguer. And we used to take the bus, they'd put us into a big school bus and take us to games. And I remember also being at Shea the first year it opened, and the seats were the highest you could get in the stadium.
Yeah. All the way out. The nosebleed, right?
We were actually so close, we could touch those big panels on the
Yeah.
walls.
Yeah.
They had those decorative panels. So it's amazing stories and things that you could think about. I remember collecting baseball cards when I was a kid, and I sort of do now as well too, but only special cards.
Right.
But I remember, I guess my mom threw them out when we moved.
Yeah. No.
What I could add, how many Mickey Mantle rookie cards did I have back then,
Oh.
and what they would be worth today?
Oh yeah, you can buy 3 helms.
Right? Yeah, exactly. You talk about seeing Nolan Ryan pitch, and that's quite an experience in itself, especially if you're close to the field like you were there.
You were close, yeah. It was great.
Not many people kind of understood, because you didn't hear it when you watched the games too much, but he grunted on every pitch.
Yeah.
And I tell the story that I went to, similar to you, I was on third base side at a Met game, and Brian was pitching against the Mets. He was pitching for Houston at that time. And I saw him warm up in the bullpen. And you could see Ryan, but you couldn't see the catcher.
Right.
So when you heard the first pitch, you heard a smack of the glove, really hard. Of course, when you're warming up, you do these motions to the catcher to show exactly what you're going to throw. Like this is to throw a fastball, and then this is a curveball, and then this is a changeup. So he's going through his whole repertoire, and you can hear the smack of the glove on every pitch. He gets to throwing changeups, so he signals to the catcher, and you still hear the smack of the glove. I mean, here's a guy that could throw at 40 years old. He was throwing over 100 miles an hour, and the changeups were 90 miles an hour.
Unbelievable. Yeah, he was unbelievable.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah, I used to go to, when we lived in Brooklyn, taking the train and everything, I would go to the Mets openers, and who pitched the Mets openers.
Yeah, right, sure.
So you'd see Seaver, and, it was unbelievable. Even then, when I'll never forget when they wound up trading him. That was such a horrible day.
Yeah, absolutely. I had read Seaver's book about pitching and everything. And one thing some people, and you don't know these little instances because you don't get to know the people unless you read about them and everything. But in the cold weather, he would take that liquid heat stuff and put it all over his body to keep warm when he's pitching. And that stuff really starts to sting after a while when you start to sweat.
Yeah. I mean, they had a great team, even in the 70s with Koosman.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Koosman was a great pitcher. One year, I remember he won 20 games, and the following year he lost 20 games.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, no run support. I mean, it's that's the Mets' life story.
And who would have thought that Roger Craig, in the first year, I think he lost 20 games, would become the ultimate in pitching coaches.
Yeah, right. There you go, figure.
The slider and the split finger and everything, that was mostly Roger Craig.
Yeah, but those, that you look at the Mets as far as pitching, the 69 through, 73, 74, and they had some of the best pitchers. I mean, Madlack.
Absolutely.
They had guys that can throw. Even when they traded for George Stone. I mean, they had some really good pitchers on that team.
Yeah. Yeah.
And probably if they wouldn't have gone up against, the 73 team, they beat the Big Red Machine. They could have probably, wound up beating, the Oakland A's, which is, invincible at that time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Had it twice in their career, the Mets, 73 and then 2000, going up against teams that were juggernauts,
And it turns out that the guy who actually really invented Moneyball was a former Met.
Yeah, former
Billy
Met.
Bean.
Yeah, yeah, crazy stuff. And then I look at the Mets when they went up against Kansas City a few years back. They had a chance to do it. I think if they would have taken out Harvey when they should have, they would have had a shot at doing it. Keep him in pitching. You can't have a. I think when you look at games years ago, you look at managers. They dictated what needed to be done. It's changed a little bit where you're getting the players dictating what they want to do.
Yeah.
Managers. I mean, you'll never get a manager like Billy Martin getting in the face of, Reggie, or
Sure.
say,
Yeah.
or even saying, Gil Hodges going out to bring in Cleon Jones. All right, come on, you weren't hustling enough.
Yes.
I mean, it would never happen. It would never happen today.
You want to hear a funny story? Of course, Casey Stengel had managed not only the Yankees, but I think before that, he had managed the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Yeah.
And Gil Hodges was kind of clumsy at first base. Good hitter and everything, but real clumsy. So Casey sent Gil Hodges to take dance lessons to improve his footwork at first base.
See, can't make this stuff up.
No, exactly. In fact, you say that line, you can't make this stuff up. A few years ago, the Scouts Association has an awards dinner every year. And one year, Tommy Lasorda was the guest speaker. And it was like a comedy act.
Right.
He went on for about 45 minutes. And the punchline, I mean, he's actually really a great funny guy to begin with, but the stories he would tell, he'd start to recollect things and just go off on tangents.
Come out.
And then to conclude everything, he would say, and I ain't making this up.
Right.
He would talk about Steve Sachs, who couldn't throw to first base, and he would say, and the people behind the stands were wearing catcher's gear.
I believe it, yeah.
But, but to tell what kind of guy he was, he came in, he flew in on his own dollar from California to New York to attend this dinner. And he participated in the dinner. He signed autographs for tons of people. And then he did the speech, he ate, went back into his limo and flew back to California.
Yeah, wow.
In the same night.
Yeah.
So it's the kind of guy he was.
Yeah.
Dodger Stadium, if you've never been out there, is an amazing ballpark.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of stadiums. I wound up going every year when we travel, family go on vacation, we'll always throw in a baseball game.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, we always do. We go to a ballpark, been to Anaheim, Dodger Stadium, San Diego, we're out west, Arizona, all the places. It's always great. I love it. We've always put a sporting event in our trip, But yeah, baseball's always had characters. It's funny, when I was in rehab, one of the games I watched was the 1977 game where Mark the Bird Fidrich shut out.
Yeah, I saw that one. Yeah.
I wound up watching it. I went, and I remember it was like Howard Cosell was doing it was a Monday Night Baseball game.
Right. Uh-huh.
He's there talking to the ball, making a little, dirt, little piles of dirt on the mound. I couldn't believe it. And it's a shame because, you read about his history. He pitched great that year, and he wound up having rotator cuff problems.
Right.
And they just diagnosed it. They couldn't give him the surgery, and by that time he was done. But
exactly.
He was one of those characters I was just thinking of. I was like, man, baseball's had some really
absolutely
people.
Well, sorry to say we're running out of time, Steve. It's so good to see you, and thank God you're still around here to give us some great music. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our thanks to our special guest, sax player Screamin' Steve Barlotta of the fabulous New Jersey band, the Sensational Soul Cruisers. Thanks, Steve, for joining us, and all our best, and God bless in your recovery from the coronavirus. Thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you next week.